I remember getting told not to talk to strangers all the time as a kid, but these days, kids are talking to strangers all the time. In fact, the stranger is in your house, and it's called the internet. Hey y'all, SnarkyJay cosplay here. I recently went to a restaurant and I sat down for dinner, and when I took a look around, there were children at almost each and every table out for a Saturday afternoon dinner with their families, and every single child, be it a school-aged child, a toddler, sometimes even babies, every single one, from high chair to booth to stroller, had either headphones on their ears or an iPad or iPhone in their hands, sometimes even a combo of the two. And it made me realize that most of today's children and babies are literally being raised by algorithms and not by the people that birthed them. And spoiler alert, the algorithms and the internet are run by people that usually don't have the best interests of children at heart. And see, this is probably like not really my problem to talk about because I don't have kids, but being that I kind of was one not that long ago, and I do a lot of charity work with children, in my opinion, they are entirely sacred creatures and should be treated as such. But the more I see people willing to just stuff iPhones, iPads, devices, whatever, into the hands of their kids to get them to shut the f up, the more I realize these kids are literally being failed, not just by their parents, but by the entirety of the world around them, because we're just letting them be raised by computers that don't have their best interests at heart, because, you know, they don't have a heart. iPhones and Ring cameras replaced babysitters, and YouTube replaced Saturday morning cartoons. And I'm not gonna sit here and be a boomer stick in the mud about technology. At the end of the day, there are a lot of benefits, and there is still a lot of good kids content out there for them, some of which is more accessible and more affordable now than ever. But the fact of the matter is that we're now reaching new levels of digital dependency for adults, and even worse, it's affecting kids too.
We'll get into that in just a minute. First, here's a word from this video's sponsor.
Alright folks, we are officially in spooky season. The werewolves are out, the vampires are out, the witches are on their brooms, but scarier than all of that is the thought that you could be getting your personal information stolen and sold on the dark web. And if that wasn't bad enough, there are people looking to track and hack you at any given time. Are you looking to be the boy that cried werewolf, or are you gonna start working with today's sponsor, NordVPN? NordVPN isn't just dressing up as a hero for Halloween. They actually are the hero that works hard to protect you from the threat of online surveillance, censorship, hacking, you name it. Right now, you can get an exclusive NordVPN deal plus 4 months extra when you go to nordvpn.com/snarkyjay. There's no tricks, just treats. You can get a 30-day money-back guarantee in the event you're unhappy with them, which you won't be. Besides enjoying the chills and thrills of my personal favorite season, I've also been really busy with conventions, so it's been really nice having a VPN to protect me while I'm out and about traveling. NordVPN's Threat Protection Pro guards my every click. It checks links to make sure they're not phishing, it checks files for malware, and it also keeps me safe from those super annoying spooky pop-up ads. With 24/7 customer support and protection on up to 10 devices, NordVPN is out there to make sure it's nothing but treats for you this spooky season. So take advantage of the exclusive NordVPN deal and get 4 months extra at nordvpn.com/snarkyjay. Try it totally risk-free with a 30-day money-back guarantee. I do want to take just a quick second to acknowledge one factor that I think really made this awful, and I think that was the pandemic. There were a lot of pandemic babies that basically were raised as toddlers during a period where there was no interactivity with other people, but a lot of schools suffered as a result of the pandemic and never quite went back to where they had to be. So a lot of kids are literally growing up without a really strong basis for social interaction, or even having to find things for themselves, because now with the advent of ChatGPT and other AI, there's just things that work for you. And now, for many children, the first friend they ever make is going to be some kind of avatar in an app or an influencer that doesn't know they exist. Now, I'd be silly to blame the pandemic entirely on this, but there are a lot of reasons that kind of led us in the direction where we're at with today's youth, which makes me feel 80 every time I say it, but I really do mean youth like babies. Admittedly, I do always try to tread carefully with topics like these, and I don't like to get too high and mighty when I talk about how parents raise their children because, one, again, I don't have any, so I don't know what it's like. And two, I can comprehend that a lot of people are overwhelmed with their own lives, and therefore taking on a child 100% becomes a lot more complicated than it really needs to be. And sure, like that's kind of your job, but I mean, I think they have that whole it takes a village thing because back in the day, there really was a village that would kind of unite around new parents and help them. And now 9 times out of 10, both parents are working 9 to 5, struggling to put food on the table, rent is too expensive, and the child's attention eventually is going to suffer. So when a parent is overwhelmed and you just want to take the older kid out to TGI Fridays and the little one is being fussy, it's so easy to just shove an iPad in their hands. Back in the day, you had to shove a pacifier in their mouth and hope they would shut up, but the kids still needed a little bit of attention and engagement at the table, and it was probably harder to keep them entertained and quiet. But now, they literally have a world of entertainment that you can stuff in front of their faces and in their hands, and they figure out how to use them so quickly that you never have to interact with the kid because he's probably going to watch Miss Rachel till the cows come home. And so the first step in how this happens is it takes the parent putting the tablet in the kid's hands. It's always going to start there. Then the next step comes from the literal nature of these platforms. YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, anything you use pretty much exists to keep you on that platform as long as possible. They optimize for engagement, not well-being. They're not worried about your mental health, or even more important still, the mental development of highly impressionable children. They just want you to sit there and scroll as long as possible. There are literal kids falling asleep, and in their dreams, they're still sitting there scrolling because of how used to having these tablets they are. These social media platforms, whether they be specializing in long-form content or short-form content, pictures, whatever, most of them essentially have an infinite scroll design. If you were to open YouTube Shorts right now, you could just sit there and scroll and scroll and scroll and scroll, and there's no point where you land on a home page or anything that's going to stop you. You're gonna keep going forever. Instagram works the same way, both with their reels and their images. YouTube works the same way with long-form content with autoplay. There's always something scheduled next. There's never a point where any of these platforms feel like, okay, you're done now, you should go take a break. And it basically becomes like a drug. Even as somebody who's mostly developed now, I think, there's still that thing of like, oh my god, I love this video, I love this post, let's see the next big thing. You end up in this dopamine loop where you are looking for the next hit, the next instant gratification, the next viral moment, because it's all right here. And beyond that, on another note that's as scary but is a little different, there's also the whole parasocial bond thing. A lot of people develop parasocial bonds and relationships with people that talk on camera frequently in front of them. I have had plenty of cosplayers and YouTubers that I watch that when I've met them at conventions, there's that thing of like, oh my god, you're real, holy shit. That's, you know, we're like friends. And we're not. They don't know I exist. I just watch their channels frequently. But it happens. We develop bonds because we're human beings. We see each other enough and we go, yeah, I know this person. I feel like I know them. And we as adults can rationalize, yeah, no, this person doesn't actually know me. I'd love to meet them, but I don't know them. But children can't. Children will see a Miss Rachel speaking to them or an influencer speaking to them through this lens, through this screen for long enough that they might actually think, hey, this person's talking to me, they're doing this for me, we're friends. And that's where the scary thing comes in, because these children develop emotional connections to people that aren't there for them, don't know they exist, sometimes people that aren't real, things that aren't tangible. And that's really f***ed up. And none of this is doing anything good. For one, kids are developing shorter and shorter attention spans, just like I think a lot of grown people are. We look at the fact that platforms like YouTube now almost want to push shorts, and Instagram also wants to push reels. There's a draw away every single day from long-form content, from full-length films, from full-length TV shows. Everybody wants shorter and shorter, 15-second clips, 5-second clips, 10-second clips. Everything needs to be quick, instant gratification. And that just creates a shorter and shorter attention span. Because if it didn't grab my attention in 5 to 10 seconds, if I didn't get the information I needed, what is the point of me staying? Kids are also getting more and more confused identity-wise, and I don't mean in a socio-political way. I just mean that they're easily influenced by things that they see on the internet. And I think a lot of kids almost feel forced to grow up even faster because there's no safe spaces specifically for them. So they're like 6 and 7, and they're talking like influencers and tapping their nails on products like the ASMR people because they think that's what they have to be now. At age 6, I was sticking toothpicks into dried coconuts I found on the street and making characters out of them. I was collecting feathers so that I could build a duck. I was gluing googly eyes on rocks. And maybe those were all stupid things to do, but at least I was being creative. I didn't have my head shoved up an influencer's ass. A lot of good all that creativity did me growing up, but hey, at least I had a good foundation. I also hate to say this because I know somebody in the comments is gonna go, oh my god, you're being so elitist. I don't care. Dictionaries exist for a reason, and there's a reason why schools try to teach things a certain way. We also are living in a time where children understand less and less of real vocabulary and grammar and actual education, and are leaning more and more into online slang and communicating like they're in a chat room. The whole thing is just like, that's crazy, say psych, skibbity toilet. I don't know what a skibbity toilet is, but I've seen so many children just walking around saying it. Like, if they didn't learn it from Fortnite, it doesn't exist anymore. And then there's this paradox between comfort and chaos, where if we think about the constant barrage of content and information that we get via these devices, it's essentially chaos. But it's a noise that fills the mind. These kids, their brains are constantly buzzing with information, with entertainment, with content, whatever they have on this phone. And when they step away from it, that quiet is soul-sucking. It's lonely. I have friends my age that are basically incapable of existing without earbuds in, without listening to music or a podcast or a video. They need it. They need the noise. And as human beings, we need time for our minds to take stock of what our day has been so that we can process, so that we can think. And these kids aren't learning to think, they are learning to constantly self-soothe with what they can find here. And they don't look elsewhere, because what more could they want? They are hyper-connected, but they're lonely. And it sucks because this is a really bad place for them to be in and for us. Before I continue about, my save the world, save the children kick, need I remind you that if you're my age or a little bit older or a little bit younger, we're not gonna be young or young-ish forever. Eventually, we're going to need medical care from people that were raised by Skibbity Toilet. I don't want to get an IV from somebody who's been raised by Skibbity Toilet. I don't want to get medical attention from somebody that grew up doing nothing but playing Fortnite. And eventually that's going to be all we have. These people are going to go get MDs and they're going to learn via ChatGPT and we're all going to be in nursing homes f***ed. Anyway, so it's hard to figure out who exactly is responsible for this. Because on the one hand, we can look at their parents and go, why the f*** are you putting a tablet in the hands of a child who can barely lift his own head? Let him learn to walk and take a dump on his own before we, start shoving an iPad in his hands. But on the other hand, that's kind of the direction that technology has gone. People are just more and more connected than ever. I've seen kids walking to and from schools in my area that no longer carry backpacks because everything is now done on the internet. Everything is on the computer. Nobody's handing out a workbook. There's no bringing mom a construction paper hand turkey on Thanksgiving. Everything is on the computer. So how can you, as a parent, for instance, raise a child and go, I'm not putting an iPad in their hands, but you send them off to get an education and they go, hey, put an iPad in his hands because that's the only way we're going to teach him anything. And so then if we can't blame the parents, we can blame the platforms. But the platforms, at the end of the day, are businesses, and they don't work for the well-being of your children. Companies back in the day, like I had this video game system called a VTech back in the day. I don't remember what the exact device was called, but I would play on the VTech and they had all these games themed around my favorite movies like Toy Story and all that kind of thing, and they were educational. And this was made by a company that made things for kids. So they were thinking of me as a toddler when they produced this specific thing. These platforms make things for the consumer. They make things to make money. They are not thinking about your kids because it's not their responsibility to. And so they in turn blame the parents because, hey, you should be watching your kids better. And so we end up in this like endless loop playing the blame game. But at the end of the day, you know what's happening is kids are getting screwed, advertisers are profiting, and nobody is helping the little ones out. We now have AI companions that are meant to assist in learning as opposed to children learning socially or being able to rely on a teacher. And I think that that's so f***ed up. I will never forget, my kindergarten teacher was the kindest person on the planet, and I actually ran into her at a grocery store about a year ago, and she literally remembered me, and it was insane. But I remember that teacher was my first example of kindness and empathy outside of the home. Because I'd had it at home with my grandparents and my parents, but I never went to like a preschool or a daycare center or any of that. I was very sheltered until the age of about 4 or 5. And when I started school, you know, when you're dealing with kids that are kind of mean or whatever, this teacher was this glimmer of empathy and kindness. And I was so fortunate to have so many teachers like that as a kid. And even in my adolescence, I was the weirdo wearing a big hoodie with my hair really short so nobody would look at me. And I would eat lunch with my English teacher and my art teacher and other people's English teachers that were just nice every day. And without that learning, without experiencing things with other people your age, without dealing with educators, where are we? Where are these kids going? AI companions are not replacements for real human beings. I constantly say I don't like people and I struggle dealing with people. I'm kind of an introvert. I have a hard time really being super social. And even then, I would 100% rather find myself in a room of strangers where it's a lottery to find people who are either complete assholes or kind-hearted individuals that I can chat with. I would much rather find myself in a room with them than with one AI that's going to be exactly the person I need it to be. It's not real, and these children are being raised without knowing anything different. The future we're currently building, I think, is probably the bleakest we've ever seen, and I'm well aware that every generation is worried for the one after it, and everybody's the greatest generation. I would never say that I'm part of the greatest generation, but I will say that I'm worried for the generations after me, because they might be some of the most technologically literate, but they're going to be media illiterate and emotionally illiterate, unavailable, uneducated individuals. They're going to be raised by algorithms and artificial intelligence. They're never going to learn to learn on their own because computers are now doing the learning for you. They'll write an essay for you. They are doing everything for them. And it makes me wonder if we're really heading for a future that looks like the future in WALL-E minus the adorable robots, because the Boston Dynamics ones are scary. But on the bright side, I think I'm obviously not the only one talking about this. I think awareness of what exactly is happening with Gen Z, or whatever generation this is called, that awareness is actually growing. I think more and more we're seeing adults and content creators participating in digital detox trends, which could eventually inspire parents, adults, and even the children scrolling social media when they shouldn't be, to sort of take a step back and step away from technology for a little bit. I think we're also living in a world where a lot more creators are sort of recognizing, I don't want to say their responsibility in these situations, but they're recognizing their roles, and they're being way more honest about their lives, about their content, about their purposes, which I think is definitely going to help the youth that watches them and looks up to them so much. And in the news, I think we're starting to see way more pushback against doom scroll parenting, which is basically, you know, just shoving a device in a kid's hand and letting him scroll until he falls asleep and starts drooling on the iPad. I think we're starting to see pushback against that, and it might sort of start a counter-revolution of parents avoiding giving these tablets and devices and access to these platforms to their kids until they're a little older and can handle it. But I mean, what do I know? I am a childless YouTuber ranting into the abyss, so who knows where we're gonna be headed, but I am really hoping our future doesn't look anything like the Terminator franchise or WALL-E, which is actually where I think we're headed. And that's all from me. I've been SnarkyJay. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. For more SnarkyJay, be sure to check me out on Instagram, and if you'd like to support me, this channel, and my content creation, do check out and consider subscribing to my Patreon for exclusive photo shoot sets and cosplay content. I'll add links to all of those in the description below, and let me know your thoughts on doom scroll parenting in the comments below.